My guest today on Teach Online TV speaks all over the world about topics from social media, marketing, and sales. And he's written a variety of books on the topics, including The New Rules of Marketing and PR and Newsjacking, which talks about how you can actually jack the news to take advantage of it for your marketing purposes, where you get to insert your story into the hottest, latest news trends. If you're interested in learning more about David Meerman Scott, check out this interview. We also have some links below for some more resources from David. Really excited to hear what David has to say. Hope you'll stay with us. All right. Hi, David. Welcome. And it's great to be talking to you.
It's awesome to be here, Greg. I love working with Thinkific. It's been great working with you and the team, so it's wonderful to talk this way.
Well, excited to ask you a few questions and find out a little bit more about what you're doing. And I think a lot of our audience and our clients could learn a lot from you in terms of the marketing space. Just as an introduction, for those of you who are not familiar with David Meerman Scott, he is the author of The New Rules of Marketing and PR, a book that has sold over 350,000 copies in English. And as I learned, it's now in 25 different languages. And the 5th edition was published in October of 2015. In addition to being an author, you're a keynote speaker and speak all around the world and are an expert in marketing and sales as a strategist. I'm really excited to have you and be chatting with you today and learning a little bit more from you. Maybe you can give us, we kind of gave a bit of an introduction there, but if you can let us know a little bit more about yourself,
sure.
That's always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really lucky that my early career, even before the web, I was in the real-time financial information business. So I learned about real-time information working for companies that competed with Reuters and Dow Jones and Bloomberg. And it was fantastic to be able to see what was going on in the real-time world. And then I got fired from Thomson Reuters in 2002. And looking for something to do, I stumbled on the idea that marketing and public relations and selling on the web is all about creating great content. And so that's what I've been writing and speaking about since 2002. I've got 10 books altogether. And as you said, The New Rules of Marketing and PR is probably the one I'm best known for. But it's all about helping people to understand ways that you can use online content, whether that's blogs or infographics or ebooks or online courses, to generate attention with your audiences.
Excellent. And so, you talk about online content. How would you differentiate what you're doing and what you talk about from, say, just content marketing? Is that another way of describing it? Is it different than that?
I think content marketing is probably something that that a term that people would recognize and understand. I actually wrote the very first book about content marketing way back in 2005. And so, yeah, that it is about content marketing, but I think there's a nuance to it. There's a little bit of a difference to it, because most people think of content marketing as something that you can create way ahead of time. So you can create, I don't know, an ebook that you're going to launch 2 months from now. You can create an email newsletter that you're going to be pushing out next week. You can be creating a blog post and writing it now, and you're going to push that blog post out 2 weeks from now. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I've found is that about real-time instant information is where things have really changed in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's what the whole rise of social networking is all about. Twitter and Periscope and Instagram and all these services, status updates on Facebook and LinkedIn. That's all about real-time instant connections. So yes, it is content marketing, but the difference as I see it, that most people are missing is the idea of what you can do right now in real time, because that's when people are interested. That's when there's something happening in the news. That's when they're thinking about buying a product or service. Someone goes to Google, they're going to Google right now. Now is when you need to reach them, not 3 weeks from now. So I'm not saying don't do your long-term planning, but I am saying you've got to focus on real time.
Great. And so when you're doing that short-term stuff, is it shorter content as well, or are you still putting out, usually when I'm planning for a longer-term piece, we might put something together that is much longer, and are you putting out shorter pieces because you're putting it out in real time?
Well, it can be shorter, but it's really just about being in front of buyers when the buyer is ready. That's what I think the difference is. In general, marketing, all marketing, especially offline marketing, and also lots of traditional content marketing, is about putting out information when you're ready, when the company is ready. Okay, I'm ready to put out a marketing campaign now, so I'll do it. I'm ready to advertise now, so I'll do it. Now I've got time to write a blog post, so now is when I'll write my blog post. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point where I think it's different is that when a buyer is ready to buy, they're ready right now. And there's no excuse for you not being in front of them when they're ready to buy. And that can be simple things, like if somebody emails your company and says, hey, I'm interested, I need to learn some more, I want to have a chat with a salesperson. That means getting back to them instantly, not next week or tomorrow, but instantly. It means that if somebody's on your site and you happen to see that they've downloaded a particular ebook, you can reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for downloading this ebook. A lot of people who have read this ebook also are interested in watching this video of a client who has used the ideas in the ebook to get noticed, or whatever business you're in. It can be some simple things like if people are tweeting using your company name or product name or a hashtag that's important to you, that you should be part of that conversation right away. I mean, things like that. So it's not necessarily the content itself is shorter. It's how you intelligently use that content at the right moment, the precise moment that people can most make use of it, and also the precise moment where you're more likely to make a sale.
It sounds like that's creating a much more personalized experience too, where you're talking about actually responding to actions that people are taking and mindsets they're in right at that moment.
Oh, I think so. I think it's more personal. I think in a kind of weird way, it gets us back to where we were 100 years ago. I mean, this is, kind of a weird kind of argument that these incredible modern tools are getting us back to where we were 100 years ago. But follow my crazy thinking here for a second, Craig. What I think is that 100 years ago, our great-great-grandparents, if they needed to buy a chicken or a piece of furniture or whatever it was, they would go to the town, or they would go to their neighbor, and they would have a personal connection, a personal discussion, and they would buy something. If they had good service, they would come back and buy again. But over the last 75 years or so, we've had this aberration, this mass marketing aberration, where everybody thought the ways to sell things was through massive television advertising. And dumbing things down. You never really had a personal connection with most of the businesses that you worked with in the way that your great-great-grandparents did. But I think that the tools of real-time communications, Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and many other tools, allow us in a virtual way to have those same kinds of connections. It also allows us to, as appropriate, be able to comment on things that are happening in the news, about things that are going on in your area, about things that are happening in your industry at the moment that people are paying attention to them. And that's also really important. That also brings us back to the days of 100 years ago where, the big news of the day is what people talked about. Not the television show that somebody made 6 months ago and happened to be broadcasting tonight. No, it's about, what is the news of the day, what's happening today.
Right. And so, I mean, newsjacking, that's a term that we've heard a lot in the last little while and see in a lot of different places and people using. That is a term that you coined, right?
I cannot claim to coin the term newsjacking. When I first started talking and writing and speaking about newsjacking way back in 2011, so 5 years ago, the term existed, but it was not widely used. I Googled the term newsjacking and found that there was only a couple of hundred places that the term had been used in really weird minor corners of the web. So no, I didn't coin the term. But there's no doubt that I popularized it. I wrote a book called Newsjacking. I've actually delivered presentations including newsjacking in the presentations now in over 20 countries. So I'm the one pushing it out there. And it's a fantastic concept. It's basically the art and science of injecting your ideas into a breaking news story. So when you know what's going on in the news, you can take advantage of that by putting your take, putting your content into the marketplace exactly when people are ready. So an example would be this entrepreneur named Trent Silver. He's awesome. He loves to newsjack, learned it from me. He has a business called Cash for Purses. And Cash for Purses buys used handbags from people on the web. They fix them up and then they on-sell them either through eBay or through physical stores that sell high-end handbags and used clothing. And so these are Prada, Louis Vuitton, Coach, really high-end bags like that. His problem is how can he get more handbags? So he heard that Lindsay Lohan was having money troubles. So what he did was he then created a blog post where he offered to buy Lindsay Lohan's used handbags. And then the media loved it, right? Because the media is looking for a new angle on the story that Lindsay Lohan is having money troubles. And all of a sudden this guy, Trent Silver, is pushing out this content offering to buy her used handbags. And the Huffington Post wrote about it, Radar Online wrote about it, People Magazine wrote about it. He was in dozens of media outlets. And the headlines were things like, Lindsay Lohan's purses may be the key to her financial freedom. And every single one of those media stories linked back to Trent Silver's site. And he told me, he's just a he's a 22-year-old entrepreneur. He told me that with that one newsjacking opportunity, he was able to generate $250,000. He had 8,000 new leads, and he closed 18% of those for $250,000 worth of new business. So that's the idea of newsjacking. It's simply, how can you be in front of a story by putting your take in that news story out there so that you get attention from the media and then you get sales leads, you grow business, and everyone's happy and healthy from that.
Oh, that's great. And I love that example because the buying used purses is the sort of thing, if you told me that you had an online course on ISIS or on, natural disaster preparedness or something like that. We just had an earthquake here in Vancouver this morning. So I would think, okay, that makes sense. I can newsjack that. I'll look for stories on earthquakes or I'll look for stories on ISIS and I can insert our story into that. But something like used handbags, initially it wouldn't be really intuitive as to how you would get that into a news story. But that's brilliant. It just shows you that with a little creative thought and looking around out there, you can really get yourself out there regardless of what your topic is.
Oh, I think so. And the last sort of 5-6 months before I launched my master newsjacking course with Thinkific, I was thinking how I can create a course that can teach people these techniques, which is what I ended up doing, which I'd been doing from the podium, from the stage a lot, which I've been doing it through my blog posts. But what's the proper steps of the course? And I outline all of that. But I think anybody can newsjack. People say to me, "Oh, David, I can't do this because I'm and then fill in the blank." They say whatever they do, and that's the reason they can't do it. But I think anybody can do it. One of the examples in the course, which I love to tell, is a lawyer. His name is Mitch Jackson. He's a lawyer with a company called Jackson and Wilson, and he's always putting out interesting comments on his blog. And it doesn't have to be a blog post, by the way, for newsjacking. It could be a video, it could be a photograph. An infographic is a great way to newsjack. But anyway, he likes to blog. He also likes to go onto Periscope, interestingly, with newsjacking. But what he does is he comments on the legal issues of stories in the news. So, for example, just as we're recording this, just a couple of days ago, they launched that new movie about concussions. So he put out a blog post about concussions. A couple of weeks ago, Charlie Sheen announced that he's HIV positive. So Mitch Jackson put out a blog post about the legal ramifications of somebody who finds out that they have HIV. And these things then get noticed by the press, but interestingly, they also get noticed by someone who's perhaps has that kind of legal issue and wants to hire someone to defend them or somebody to prosecute someone who did them harm. And in fact, with Mitch Jackson, he's told me, as a result of his newsjacking, he's generated not only lots of media attention, to the point now the media actually seek him out on stories that have a legal ramification, but he's also ended up generating clients, and more than one client, multiple clients that have generated $1 million verdicts in their favor. And if you know how lawyers here in the States work, they take a pretty hefty percentage of that result. So Mitch has told me,
Yeah.
he's told me without actually telling me that newsjacking has generated millions of dollars for his business. And he's a lawyer. So if a lawyer can do it, so can anybody who's listening in onto this video.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because law is definitely one of those things. I mean, we actually used to have, there was a lot of rules about advertising as lawyers. Basically, you weren't allowed to advertise as a lawyer back in the day. That was before I was practicing, but at one point you weren't allowed to advertise at all. It was considered not appropriate for lawyers, right?
Right. And a lot of people say that about their business. If they're a doctor or a lawyer or certain kinds of consultants or, whatever it is, that doesn't sound right for me. But I think it works for anybody. And I've seen it work for lots of different organizations. And fortunately, over the last 5 years since I started writing and speaking about newsjacking, people have shared their successes with me. So I put a lot of different industry examples into that course I built.
Great. And so would you have any, I know there's a ton of stuff in the course and I want to get into that, but do you have any sort of specific actionable steps for people who are looking to get started or look into this? If, say, specifically they have an online course, so someone's put it together an online course, they're limited in who their audience is and who they have reached to. How would they sort of get started in getting out there and taking advantage of this for marketing an online course?
Yeah, so I think the first step is understand, who is your course reaching? Who are the people who would buy your course? And I call that your buyer persona. So who's the buyer that you're trying to reach? And then think about what are the sorts of stories that might appear in the news that you could potentially create content around to get your ideas into the marketplace. How could you maybe think of something that's interesting that's going on that you could write about or that you could do a video about to get your course into the market? And then the most important aspect is then you have to have a real-time mindset. You have to have a mindset that says, okay, I understand what's happening here. I need to take advantage of this opportunity, and I'm going to do it when the moment is right. And that means when the moment is right, you need to talk about it right then and not wait. And so that's one of the hardest things for people is that, if the news breaks today, that means you put it out today, not tomorrow or not next week. If there's a really fast-breaking story and you can be the first one in front of it, again, Mitch Jackson, Charlie Sheen announcing he's HIV positive, push that out really quickly, you get noticed. I myself, for example, just 2 or 3 days ago, I wrote a very detailed blog post about how Donald Trump and Jeb Bush, by the way, the U.S. presidential elections is fantastic fodder for newsjacking, for certain people. So I put out a blog post where I compared how Donald Trump is doing his let's call it marketing, and how Jeb Bush is doing his marketing. Jeb Bush spent over $30 million on television ads for a 3% in the polls. Donald Trump has spent only $200,000 on advertising, but he's absolutely, totally the king of newsjacking. Whenever there's another candidate says something, he's right out in front of it to then refute it in some way. He's always commenting on things that are happening in the news. He is a master at newsjacking. So I actually blogged about how Donald Trump is much better at real-time communications than the other candidates. The other candidates, especially Jeb Bush, are spending a fortune on traditional forms of marketing like television ads. So I pushed that out on my blog. And then I had a link to my course on Thinkific, on my newsjacking course. I used a call to action that says, "Want to learn more about this? Go check out my Thinkific course." And I actually made a sale as a result that I can tie directly back to it. So that's the idea. That's the idea of how, if you have a course, you can tie it back to what's going on in the news. In my case, a course about newsjacking. Donald Trump's a master newsjacker. Write about it, and then offer to have a link to the course where people can learn more about this concept of newsjacking.
That's great. And I love, you kind of got into it there in that essentially it's free or very inexpensive. And a lot of advertising, paid stuff, pay-per-click, you can go down a bit of a rabbit hole if you don't know what you're doing and spend too much. And this is amazing because you can get out there and really get some exposure for free. Plus, I love the idea that, with conventional paid advertising and most other efforts, it kind of grows slowly over time. And I think that's actually another big difference between this and content marketing. And content marketing, often, you talk to people like Rand Fishkin, the experts in the content marketing spaces, and yourself, and they'll tell you it's a year or two before you really see big results. But with this newsjacking, you can put something out there today, and if it gets picked up, like your friend with the story about the purses, is you can see in his case $250,000 in business in a matter of days or weeks. So I think it's pretty amazing that it has that explosive potential with very little investment.
It does, and there's a real simple reason for that. It's because Google indexes in real time. Twitter indexes in real time. So what that means is if you send a timely tweet with an appropriate hashtag, the whole world sees it right then. If you send a blog post, if you send a YouTube video, if you send an Instagram, any of these things are instantly indexed so that people can search on them or find them. So a blog post about something that's happening in the news is instantly visible by anyone looking for what that thing is in the news. So, and as you mentioned, Greg, it's free. This stuff is free. I mean, I can't believe that it's like free money sometimes. It's really pretty amazing. I'll give you a quick B2B example. My favorite example of newsjacking. I'll give you the punchline ahead of time. This is the $16 million newsjacking. So.
Wow.
Joe Payne, the CEO of a company called Eloqua, which is a marketing automation software company, Canadian-based, he found out that his competitor called Market to Lead was acquired by Oracle. So he went to Google. As soon as he heard this, he went to Google, typed in Oracle and Market to Lead, and there was only one hit for that phrase. There was only one hit for anyone talking about the acquisition, and it was actually came from Oracle. It was an announcement on the Oracle website about the acquisition, and it was only 3 sentences long. So there's basically no information provided in that announcement on the Oracle website. So what Joe did was he did a blog post providing context to that acquisition, providing context to what it means. And as a result of doing that, then he was quoted in PC World and Information World and important blogs, and in the important research firms like Gartner. They all quoted him in their reports because he was timely. And then they sent a link to that blog post through Twitter, through LinkedIn, using appropriate hashtags to appropriate groups. Also sent a link to that blog post to their email list. And that generated about a half dozen new customers for a total of $1 million in new revenue. And then a year later, Oracle also bought Eloqua. And the purchase price of Oracle's acquisition of Eloqua was roughly $850 million, and I calculated that extra $1 million of revenue that they created from this newsjacking was worth $15 million on the purchase price. So add those two numbers together, it's $16 million. And that's a B2B example. So it's not just consumer brands, it's any kind of organization that can do this.
Wow, that's great. Love those kind of stories. That's great to hear.
The whole point is that Joe Payne was right out in front of it as soon as the story broke. He was within 2 hours of the acquisition being announced. He had his blog post out. If he had waited till the next morning, there's no way that would have happened.
Great. And you know, I love hearing these stories, and I know you have more and more actionable advice in the course. You're using Thinkific for your course. Always
Yeah.
happy to hear feedback. How's it going for you? How are you using it? And if people are interested in learning more from you, what's sort of the best place for them to start?
Sure. So, well, with Thinkific, I had been thinking about doing a course for, gosh, 2 years, because I thought this whole idea of newsjacking was a perfect way to create more content about newsjacking, and a course was a perfect type of content to do. But I was absolutely, totally freaked out about the idea of creating a course. It like I couldn't sleep at night if I thought about it. So I just kept putting it off, and putting it off because I was worried about how am I going to do it. And then a friend of mine, Chris Brogan, I know you know Chris, introduced me to Thinkific, and I'm like, wow, this seems pretty easy. I can actually do this. This looks great. So a couple of things came together. My daughter just graduated from university, and she's actually taking a gap year in between university and medical school. So she is doing a little bit of work for me and my company. She helped me create some of the videos, and then I put together the course. It was so easy on Thinkific. I mean, my gosh, everything is there. Everything you need to do, it's all there. It's really easy to use. You know, the whole billing and credit card bits and pieces, uploading the content, how the people who buy the course interact with the course, the reports that I get about the sales I'm making. And the thing that I love the most about it is that in my work, I mainly make my income through speaking engagements. So I'm kind of like a taxi driver, right? Or an Uber driver. If there's someone in my back seat, I'm making money. If I'm giving a speech, I'm making money. What I love about my course is that I get an email from you, Greg, not from you personally, but from Thinkific when I'm sleeping. You know, I'm asleep, and all of a sudden, you know, I wake up the next morning, and oh my gosh, there's an email that said I just made $450. Someone bought my course. Where'd that? You know, how cool is that, right? Making money while you sleep. So, and I think that the course software is really a great tool, and I'm actually recommending it to people that I run across as a great tool. So, thank you for doing that. It made it really easy.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. That's great to hear. I love hearing those kind of stories. That's great. I love the
Making money while you
part.
sleep, man. Anytime I can make money while I sleep, I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah, and you've put in the work to get there. I mean, there's always a little bit of work. You know, it doesn't just happen overnight. But it's awesome to hear when people get to that point where it comes in and they have that realization of, wow, I'm not working today, and it's coming in.
And you know, it does take work. To do a good course takes work. I knew that was the case, and I just managed to slot it into other things. You know, I'd come in on a Saturday morning and bang out a couple of videos. My daughter would then edit them and make them into a final video, and we'd upload them. What was really cool about the software is that it's all like you can all manipulate it. It doesn't matter what order I update the videos, I can put them in any order to put the course together. I also like that. I mean, I have a lot of videos. Some of them I'm speaking into the camera. Some of them are videos of me on the stage doing a presentation. Some of them are television appearances I've had on stations like MSNBC. And then some of them are slide decks where I'm doing a voiceover on the slide deck. So a number of different types of videos. But I also have PDF-based content, JPEGs, text-based content. So there's all sorts of different sorts of content that can be uploaded, which is great. But I just did it during downtime. So although it did take a couple of months to put it together, it's not like I was working 24/7 for a couple of months. It was just to put it together during the downtime. But great. Putting the work in is important. You know, a half-ass course isn't going to do great.
And so if people want to learn more about you, about newsjacking, about your marketing and sales strategies, what's the best place for them to get started?
So all the information you need to know about newsjacking is on newsjacking.com. And also on newsjacking.com, you'll see some free downloadable infographics, some videos, some other things you can get that don't cost anything. That also links to the course. the Master Newsjacking course. And then I'm David Meerman Scott. Google my name. I've got a bunch of other free stuff out there that you can grab. I'm on Twitter. I'm DM Scott, DMSCOTT.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you, David. I appreciate it. It's been awesome chatting with you, and looking forward to seeing more newsjacking from you. And I'm definitely going to put some of it to work for Thinkific and share this with our audience, because I really think there's a lot of wins here for people in all. I'm just thinking of all the different courses that I've seen created, and the really cool ways I could see people, taking advantage of different stories out there, from whether they're teaching art or things about, in all the news I'm seeing now about drones, and I've seen people putting together courses on drones and drone piloting. There's huge opportunities there, and just like, doesn't really matter what area you're teaching in, there's opportunities to take advantage of it.
Tons of them. And you're right, it doesn't matter what area you're teaching in, doesn't matter what your course is in, there's always going to be a piece of news that comes out about it, and your job is to get out in front of that.
Great. Appreciate it. Actually, one more question, and I'm kind of backtracking here, but it just came to me and I thought it'd be a useful thing to share is, when you see that story, is there a medium that you typically go to? A blog is a great place. We don't all have a blog right out of the gate. And if you're just, you see that news piece and you don't have your blog, is there a medium that you would, suggest going to, YouTube and doing a video? Is a tweet enough? What would that, for someone who's just getting into that?
You really have to sort of think, okay, where are the people I'm trying to reach? I think that if there's an established hashtag on Twitter, you can certainly use that hashtag. That would work pretty well. A YouTube video can work really well because Google, of course, indexes. Google owns YouTube, so YouTube videos that are timely do show up in the general Google search. So that's pretty cool. I think ultimately the reason I'm a fan of blog posts is because every single word of your blog post is indexed in the Google search engine. So people who are searching on esoteric aspects of that story might find your blog post. And Google also loves really fresh content. So that's really good. But it does take a little time to build up a blog to the point where Google is indexing it really highly. But there's no reason to say that somebody who's brand new can't do this technique. It absolutely can totally work. The other thing you can do is you can directly send your stories to reporters. If you know a reporter, and particularly if that's true, if you're talking about, if you have a course in a particular industry, and there's something going on in that industry, you can send a story that you've written up, even just through email, to a reporter. If there's something going on in your geographical location, let's say you have a course on hairdressing and you have a hairdressing shop in a certain location, let's say you're in Yellowknife, Canada, you can put out something to the local newspaper wherever you happen to be, whether that's Yellowknife or wherever that might be, and they might be interested because you're hitting up your local newspaper. So there's all sorts of ways to get that content out there.
Great. Excellent. Great ideas. I appreciate that. Well, once again, I really appreciate chatting with you, and thanks for all the advice. Definitely going to be putting it to use and sharing it with a lot of people we work with as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Thanks, David. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're looking for more information, check out the resources below. Leave a comment, ask a question. I'd be happy to answer them. You can also check out Thinkific.com right here. Or if you'd like to subscribe for more information, subscribe here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again soon.